Well, welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, and I'm in the studio here with Mark Hanf of Pacific Private Money and our guest, Michelle Lerman of Lerman Law Partners. And when we cut to the first commercial break, we asked this trivia question. The 8063rd was a neighboring MASH unit. Remember, the theme today is the old show MASH. What were the four numbers of the main MASH unit? And I understand we stumped our guests here.
Stumped the co-host
so the
and
co-host
the guest.
and the guest. It was the 4077.
Oh, that's
no,
right.
that's right. Remember.
I don't know. It was so long ago when I was watching all those reruns. Now it's all Seinfeld.
Yes, exactly. Okay, Mark, you wanted to ask Michelle a couple of questions.
Yeah, on the sheet, Michelle, you gave us on notes that there's something in here about tuition and medical expenses. I didn't realize that there was an opportunity for some substantial estate savings when it comes to tuition. I know I've got a daughter that's visiting colleges all this year. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So we talked about the $5 million exclusion and the fact that you can leave that at your demise and you can also gift that now. We talked about the annual exclusion that you can actually give $13,000 to as many people as you want. I told people I'm available,
Yeah,
that $13,000,
exactly.
I'm available. And in addition to that, you can also pay for tuition, for example, for college or medical expenses directly. And that's in addition to the other gifts that you can make. So as you can see, the idea is to, as long as you can afford it, to go ahead and reduce the value of your estate so that upon your demise, your estate is lower and hence estate taxes are lower.
Yeah, because the income tax deduction for medical expenses, you've got that 7.5% of adjusted gross income limitation. So a lot of people can't pay their medical expenses and get tax deduction. So I guess that would be one way to help them, right?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I think what people miss, and the reason I included on year-end planning is that now we're starting to get, we have 4 kids, 2 of them are in college, so I'm very aware of those bills coming in and we're starting to get invoiced for next semester. And it's important that people pay it directly. You can't reimburse someone for that. So for example, you have grandchildren. You want to help with your grandchildren's education. You can't pay the money to your child to reimburse them.
No, you have to pay it directly to
You
the
have
institution.
to.
Oh, okay.
Exactly.
So that's the nuance.
Exactly. But it also is unlimited. So think again about how much you can get out of your estate, thereby eventually reducing estate tax.
Any plastic surgeries you need, Mark? I'll be glad to forward some. No, just kidding.
I forwarded this one to my dad.
Yeah.
Dad, you can pay for college
Yeah, exactly.
for my kids.
What's the idea about generation skipping tax planning or transfer tax planning? I hear that a lot, and I'm not really sure why is that a useful tool?
Well, the government is smart, despite what
Despite
it might
what we all
seem.
think, yeah.
Exactly. And they don't want people to transfer, large wealthy families to transfer wealth to grandchildren and let it skip the generation of their children for estate tax purposes, right? Because think about it, if you could transfer an unlimited amount of money to grandchildren, then you could have a whole generation of children that there's no transfer tax due.
But in theory, couldn't you transfer to your kids and then eventually they transfer to their kids?
Yeah, but then it would be subject to estate tax when the children die. They'd have the same limitations, right? Because you can't just leave an unlimited amount. You can leave the exclusion amount. You can make annual exclusion gifts. So
That's
if
true.
you did that, you left it to your kids would have the same restraint.
It almost sounds like the object is not to make a lot of money, just so you don't have to pay estate tax. But I know that's not the case.
Right.
So
right.
so generation skipping, it's not because your kids you think your kids are losers and you don't want to give it to them, you want to give it to their offspring.
I'm sure that comes into play
I always
sometimes.
think about that. I was like, why would you skip it and go straight to the grandchildren?
Well, there's actually, it's a good question. There's actually a lot of reason why you would. I mean, some of it might be you might not trust the children, but when we talk about generation skipping, it's a little deceiving because we're not talking about skipping the children completely. What we're often talking about is a trust for the children that passes to their children when they die. So are you following that?
That makes more sense.
Right,
Okay.
right. So that it's actually often a transfer tax benefit for doing that, but also protection. For example, let's say you said you had kids, Mark?
Yes.
And so your oldest is how old?
16.
16? Okay. Well, let's not say that your 16-year-old got married. But let's say that you're
God
16,
forbid.
right, let's just say that when your kids grow up, they get married. If you leave everything outright to your children, where do you think your children's estate plan is going to leave your assets?
Well, hopefully to their children.
kids. Yeah.
Right, but
Or
what
the
usually
government.
happens, they're going to leave it to a spouse.
Oh, right,
Sure.
right. Oh,
And
got
if
it.
they should get divorced, then your money that you've worked so hard for has now been subject to your kid's estate plan that left it to a spouse instead of the children. So by creating a generation skipping trust, you can say, you can have this, you give it to your child in trust. You could even make your children the trustee of the trust.
And do they basically get the income?
They can even take the principal.
Oh, they can, okay.
Sure, they can use it as they need for whatever they need it for, health, education, support, and maintenance. But the key is that the grandparents' estate plan is what controls it, not the child's estate plan.
But if the children spend all the money,
If the children spend all the money, then they spend all the money.
okay.
Then you might not make the children the trustee of the trust, if that's what you're worried about.
if you're worried about it, yeah, you should
Then
know
you-
ahead of time.
right.
In fact, my daughter's already picked out my wheelchair, so I gotta be very
Right.
careful of
So
it.
the
Hopefully it has a
idea-
motor.
Right. Well, I heard that the longevity of your parents often determines how long you'll live. And so I've heard a lot of people starting to take much better care of their parents.
What if one got hit by a bus? Does that matter? Okay.
Okay, that's a different story.
That's a different story,
But
okay.
your question is really good about the generation skipping. So the idea is that there is a certain amount excluded from tax. There is actually, what people don't know, there's an additional tax when you leave money to grandchildren. But there's also an exclusion, meaning an amount that you can leave without that tax. We often refer to it as a GST exclusion. So what a GST trust does is up to the exclusion amount, it allows you to transfer an asset to your children, then provide upon their demise it goes to their children, and it could be free of transfer tax. Because
Okay.
you're using the GST exclusion. Have I
Okay.
lost you completely?
Just a little bit. So, okay, before I forget, because I know that there's going to be people out there who are going to say, I don't quite have all of the aspects here. I've been taking notes, but I couldn't write it down fast
Right,
enough.
it sounds important,
But it sounds
but I
important.
don't know
But I
that
don't
I
get
know
it.
what they're talking about.
That's
I
right.
don't get it.
I
Yeah,
don't
like my
understand.
10-year-old says on her math homework, I don't
I don't
get it.
Yeah.
Get it.
What
And
don't
also,
you
why
get?
do I have to learn this?
Yeah, that
So,
too.
Michelle, right now, just how do people get a hold of you?
Right, so the easy way to do it is email me, Michelle, with 2 L's, at lermanlaw.com. So MICHELLE at LERMANLAW.com. Michelle at lermanlaw.com. Or feel free to call us on our toll-free number. It's 1-800-5-LERMAN. And that's 1-800-553-7626. You can
Okay.
also see us on the web, lermanlaw.com. You'll get right to our website.
And the other thing too, you do a lot of public speaking, don't you, Michelle?
I do.
I know that's,
I
so
do.
for those of you out there that, you don't really want to pick up the phone because maybe you're afraid you're going to get sold, something you don't want to, that don't want to buy. Gee, when does that ever happen? You can visit one of your speaking engagements. Is there a way to sign up on your website to get notified of when you're speaking?
Absolutely. Just go to our website and right from our website you can email me and tell us to put you on our email list, and you'll get notice of our next speaking event.
Well, the other thing is, for our listeners, you have a free special report, What You Don't Know Can Hurt Your Family. 5 easy ways to make sure your children's wishes and assets stay protected should something happen to you. Tell us about that. What are you giving our listeners?
Right, so it's a free report with valuable information, including even links to a place where you can go to download the California statutory will form. My goal, and the reason
I'm sure that's fun reading.
That's right. But the reason I do so much speaking is I am so passionate about making sure that people are protected. We also handle a lot of probate, and I see the money that can be wasted when someone doesn't have proper planning, when it's so easy to plan. So we talk about 5 basic things that everyone should know, including, if you don't have a lot of assets, download a statutory will form. Get yourself a guardian. Get yourself the basics. We recently had a probate that ended up going to distant relatives, one in Europe, one lived in the Midwest, just because he didn't have a current will, with a live beneficiary.
And that's not what he intended, I'm sure.
No.
Okay, stay with us
No.
in the studio here, because when we come back from commercial break, we're going to get into email time and other interesting real estate and other economic stuff that's
Real
going on.
estate nuggets.
Real estate nuggets. Okay, here is our second trivia question as we go to commercial break. Again, the theme is the old TV show MASH, which, by the way, Harry Morgan just died.
Oh.
96 years old. Remember him? Okay.
Wow, he lived a long time.
He sure did. What was the name of the character who dressed in women's clothes trying to get a Section 8 to get out of the Army? I see a couple of smiles on this one. I think you know this one. The first 3 callers with the correct answer win a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Again, their website is lighthouse4fun.com. Check them out. Call 888-912-1190. That's 888-912-1190 to answer this question. What was the name of the character who dressed in women's clothes trying to get out of the Army via a Section 8? Again, call 888-912-1190. Make sure to include your name, address, email address, and phone number, and speak slowly if you would, because last time people have been leaving messages a little bit too quickly here. And we will be right back